4 men suspected of cattle and goat stealing were brutally murdered in 2 separate incidents in the first week of July. In a country with so much blood being spilled every day, there may well be forgotten. And in a place where people have become tired of farm theft and governmental failure to deal with it, some even applaud the murders and others quietly accept them as just vengeance. Good day. This is the 79th episode of the Frankly Speaking Jamaica podcast. Desmond Richards and Winnie Anderson Brown join me in delivering this, the latest opinion package, to you. Remember, please subscribe to this podcast by just clicking that subscribe button. Remember, it's free. Now, to Frankly Speaking, the commentary. You will recall that in a podcast a few weeks ago, I highlighted the distant communities of Southwest St. Anne, including Madras and Gibraltar. In that podcast, I showed farmers still involved in agricultural practices that place them back into the last century, with returns that will keep them poor in this one. The people in the area said they were suffering too from prairie larceny and the other maladies. It is in Gibraltar, one of those communities, that they butchered 2 men last week. It might have been worse. 2 others in a car got away. So-called prairie larceny in Jamaica is no joke. The empirical and anecdotal evidence is that the theft of farm animals and crops has clearly reduced the interest and activity of many in the sector and prevented others from putting their money in agriculture. Frankly speaking, the ruin prairie larceny causes to private households and families right across the country is well known. The goats that were to pay for the school leaving examination fees or the first year in college, the 2 heads of cattle to put on the roof to the family house under construction for the last 10 years, stolen, family ambitions and dreams crushed. Then there are the commercial farms where the business model is that up to 1/3 of the produce will be lost to thieves, as happened last year. And then there's a farm family I know who couldn't get even a bunch of bananas off several acres of their property because when the thieves came, they came armed and using trucks in reaping and transporting. And so the owners decided, after all, to run a tractor through it all and convert the use to something else from which they could benefit. The stories are legion. There's no need to trot them out to support why theft from farms should be dealt with firmly and decisively by the government. Since about 2018, the JS mainly has been pushing a narrative that thieves steal about $6 billion a year in farm produce. With inflation and now greater thievery, that figure would well be nearly 8 to 10 billion Jamaican dollars a year. Frankly speaking, I'm skeptical about the figure in the first place. Few Jamaican companies turn over $8 billion a year, and that level of theft would wipe out even entire profitable enterprises in Jamaica. How many companies do you know in Jamaica that could sustain theft or routine losses of $6 to $10 billion a year, as our agricultural sector is said to experience? But just let us accept it for now that $6 billion a year is being lost every year to farmers. What must that be doing to them and their earnings and their enthusiasm to work and invest? What must it mean to the price of food? At $6 billion a year since 2018, that would be $30 billion in theft in the 5 years since. That's like taking a wrecking ball to any industry and to the society. Jamaican government administrations over the years have failed in a colossal fashion to deal with prairie larceny. And that very failure feeds into the thieves being emboldened and it encourages mob rule. I don't even like the phrase jungle justice. This really is an oxymoron, for there is no justice in the jungle mobbing we see so often. Local mutton now costs $1,500 a pound. Jamaica continues to produce only 10% of the mutton it consumes. 10%. The other 90% is mainly imported, old sheep from New Zealand. We can't even protect a little industry of easy to rear, hardy animals for a dearly loved product and a favorite part of the menu in Jamaica, goat, mutton. The theft of goat up and down the country is a big part of the failure of self-sufficiency, at least in that industry. So farmers and whole communities, at their wits' end, frankly speaking, have decided to enact brute vengeance on the thieves. And a society claiming to operate on the rule of law, frankly speaking, just watches and provides all kinds of explanation for the growing mob rule. It is high time the government of Jamaica protect the farmers and prevent the barbaric mob killings they are so regularly involved in to protect themselves and their property, farmers that is. Elevate farm theft to a serious crime close to terrorism, which it is. Here now is Desmond Richards. Here.
Yes, last week a very unfortunate incident took place in the court when a judge at the Supreme Court ordered that a reporter should erase recordings on his phone. And as a result of that, his phone was snatched by a policeman who kept his phone in his possession for more than 5 minutes. Now, this is totally intolerable. We can't agree with this. Yes, there are rules, and reporters, journalists, we are prepared to obey the rules. But we will not sacrifice freedom of expression. Freedom of expression is the oxygen of democracy, and we must do everything to ensure that that is protected at all costs. I would like the Press Association to have discussion with the court administration so that we can arrive at clear lines when and how reporters can record court proceedings and when they are not supposed to record, so that we don't have any situation where the judge can have to issue instructions for reporter to erase. Because one of the things that we don't want and we will not support, neither from the executive, the judiciary or parliament, we will not and we must not agree to any suppression from these arms of government to suppress freedom of expression. And we have to guard against that. We do not want that in Jamaica. And I said I would like the Press Association to make that abundantly clear to the authorities.
That's the journalist and founder of Rebel Radio Jamaica, Desmond Richards. And now, Winnie Anderson Brown.
Vision 2030. Jamaica being the place of choice to live, work, raise families, do business. Why would anyone want to live, work, do business, raise families in a country where there is discrimination on the basis of age? Have you ever stopped to think about it? That in first world countries, there's no discrimination on the basis of age. I have a colleague who tells me that someone in her department is 80 years old. That's an educator, 80 years old, and she is still doing what she has to do and doing it well. There was a time in Jamaica when they would employ older people on contract. That's what I'm told. But that is no longer the case. That's fine. But let's remember that in first world countries, they do not discriminate on the basis of age. Think about it. Joe Biden could never hold the highest office in Jamaica because he would be deemed too old. And run again? Really? He got through as being the president, and by the time it was time for his inauguration, he was 78 years old, and he's running again. So what does that mean? Donald Trump would not be able to run either. So when we think Vision 2030, let's think again. Let's think first world attitudes and values when we think Vision 2030. It's a bit late for the Vision 2030. We need a new vision.
That's Winnie Anderson Brown, educator and health facilitator. That's it for this podcast. Remember, please share your comments on anything raised here and please subscribe. Just click that button. On behalf of Desmond Richards and Winnie Anderson Brown, I'm Franklin McKnight. Until then,